Hi, so this lecture is going to be about the playwright and the play, and how the playwright constructs and creates the world of the play. Storytellers are, in a sense, playwrights, or in another way to think about this, the playwright is a storyteller. Now, theater is a combination of the efforts of actors, director, designers, but it actually begins with the impulse, the creation of the playwright telling a story, creating a script, creating the play. Now, what the playwright actually does when the playwright creates a script is they're creating the blueprint that everyone else sort of follows. So he or she creates this blueprint that structures the play, from the order of events to who the subjects are, that is the characters, to what the characters do, and the action of the play. So action or drama is a really important concept in theater. Us theater folk, we like to talk a lot about active verbs, doing, and how a character gets what they want. So it's no wonder that at the very root, etymologically, the word drama comes from the Greek word drawn, to do, and that most actors analyze their characters in terms of verbs, active verbs, as opposed to passive verbs. So an active verb would be something like to insult, or to con, or to convince, as opposed to a passive verb like to be. It's hard to act a passive verb, or at least in most Western constructs of realism, with approaches that tend to use Stanislavskian method or other, like the method, Stella Adler, Meisner, etc. So the playwright designs the play, or is this sort of uber architect of the drama. He or she decides on the parameters of the story, and these can even be seen as rules of the play or performance, sort of like rules of a game, that you know how to play football, or you know how to play basketball, volleyball, whatever, because there are certain rules that have been established and they become conventions that everybody follows those same rules. Well, a similar thing happens with theater in different areas of the world and in different genres, that the playwright, in a sense, creates the structure within certain guidelines or within certain rules. And certainly there's deviations from this, and many playwrights who challenge the rules or usurp them in a certain way. But the rules, such as like creating a play that has limited space or a limited amount of time, these ideas actually come from Aristotle's poetics, or at least he identified them as being structures of Greek theater, Greek drama, tragedies and comedies. Obviously today, playwrights challenge these conventions, but the basis or fundamentals of these ideas set out in the poetics makes sense in terms of a play being performed in a theater space. Having a multitude of locations is difficult to stage, or spanning an enormous amount of time can actually be confusing for the audience. So other conventions of drama have to do with creating characters that are strong and creating these opposing forces. So this helps set up the drama, the tension, and if the forces were uneven, the story would actually be uninteresting, be boring, and be obvious what the outcome would be. So by creating these sort of strongly opposing forces between a protagonist and antagonist, and having a balance of forces, helps create that dramatic tension. Also, having characters with incentives and motivations, that they want something, that is laid out through what they say and what they do and what other characters say and do or say about them. All of these elements the playwright helps to structure in how they create those characters. So some elements about dramatic structure. So it's important to distinguish the difference between plot versus story. Story is the narrative, what the characters do, while plot is the arrangement of the scenes, the whole. All of these things together tell the story. So it doesn't really, it matters what order they're in. The playwright designs that, but the story is divulged by that whole. So the playwright also creates the characters, and creates them as dramatic characters. If they aren't in crisis, then again, the story is less likely to grab you as an audience member and keep your interest. Other elements that the playwright devises and creates has to do with creating an opening scene that sets the tone and style for the rest of the play. I believe this can certainly be seen in the play Machinal. I've heard it pronounced both ways. And we'll be looking at the play Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf by Edward Albee next week. And certainly that opening scene in that play really sets the tone and the style. Does the opening scene set the tone and style of A Midsummer Night's Dream? Well, perhaps. I think it sets up the story without giving away the fantasy and magical forest that we have to sort of escape into and journey to this place. The playwright also sets up the obstacles. These are complications, impediments put in the character's way or path. Consider what Nora's in A Doll's House, what her obstacles are. Many times an obstacle has to do with another character getting in the way or complicating what the main character wants. Consider what multiple obstacles exist for the four lovers in A Midsummer Night's Dream. So all of these things the playwright has crafted. Now there are two sort of main categories that we place plays into, and one is either the crisis drama or the episodic drama. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the crisis drama. So in a crisis drama, the structure of the play is usually arranged with a series of crises, small crises, and the final crisis is the climax. The issues of the play are resolved at the end, but not always favorable to the main character or any of the characters. Like, for example, in Greek theater, particularly tragedy such as Oedipus or Hippolytus, this is the case. No one wins. The playwright gives us throughout the play. So the playwright gives the play a point of view, and this point of view can be tragic or comic or a mixture of the two, especially with more contemporary plays. Most plays function with levels of a point of view, or in other words, there's the dramatist or playwright's point of view, but there's also society's point of view that operates sometimes underneath everything. Again, think of A Doll's House and how the dramatist, playwright, Ibsen, his point of view wasn't exactly in line with society's point of view. And in a way, the play is a critique of society. It challenges the norms of the time that it was actually written in through the specifics of the story, the character, and the point of view taken by the playwright. And so finally, I want to look at episodic structure. So episodic structure is the second type of structure that typically plays fall into in terms of dramatic structure. And this structure isn't based on a series of crises or a final climax, but is held together through ideas or concept, such as either people, characters, or places, or events. There may be a plot, but there may also be subplots. And scenes are juxtaposed, creating meaning through that juxtaposition. So scenes might contrast and have a massive expanse of time between the two scenes, or even jump eras or even styles. So the next lecture, the next chapter, is actually on dramatic structure, and we'll take a look more specifically at climactic versus episodic structure and some of the elements within those two structures. But for this lecture, I just wanted to discuss the main points about how a playwright creates drama, tension, what the playwright as a sort of architect designs that then ends up being interpreted by all the other artists involved in the process of creating theater.